first.
Yeah, well, congratulations on the movie. Like I said last night, I think it's really just a phenomenal performance and definitely one of the better ones I've seen this year. Can you talk about the difference in playing a real-life character versus a fictional character?
I think that for me, playing a real-life character carries an extra layer of responsibility. I always wanted to do my best and be to serve the story in the best way that I can and to give my best to the people who've hired me. But when you add on portraying a person who was alive not that many years ago, to do honor to that person's memory, and also to the people who survived, who loved that in this case character that I play, it makes it I think you want to do especially well. I think it just brings an extra responsibility that I welcome, but is one more thing you wonder about as you're preparing if you're really going to capture it and do it right.
And how did you originally hear about the story? Had you read this author's stuff beforehand? Or?
I had not. No, I remember hearing about breathing lessons in the mid-'90s, that documentary short that Jessica Yu had directed that won an Academy Award about Mark's life. It doesn't talk so much about our story, mentions it briefly. So I knew a little bit about Mark, but I was unfamiliar with his poetry and his writing at that time.
So how much, you said you saw the documentary, but this film sort of went more into his character. And I know Ben did a lot of research for the film, but how much research did you do for the role? Was it more of Ben, delegating to you what he did, or did you go deeper? Did you?
Oh no, I'm an over-preparer by nature. It's any excuse to learn excites me. Whether it's longline fishing or the gold rush or ticket scalping or playing drums, all the things, the skills I had to pick up as I played characters or was lucky enough to try to learn about. There was a lot to prepare for here, and I was lucky to have a time. I was lucky to have 6 weeks, I think, or 8 weeks probably, to get ready for this part because I needed that much time. You begin with the script, which is your guide and sometimes your only guide, really, depending on the nature of the material. But there was so much else out there, and Mark was such an extreme character physically and in some cases emotionally. There was so much. I can try to touch on some things quickly. I mentioned Jessica Yu's breathing lessons. That was a great source of it was just a great tool. There was Mark, there was his body and how what exactly was his disability. I could actually see it. What did his voice sound like? I could hear it. And when you're portraying again someone who has survivors in this world, and even to the memory of the person you're playing, if they're deceased, as Mark is, you want to do right by them. I would hope if Mark saw the film, he would be pleased with it. So I want to be as close to what he was as a person as I can. You want those who survived to somehow recognize him in your performance, at least some essence of him. So I like specificity when I work, and Jessica Yu's film offered me a great deal of that. It was important to try to capture Mark's voice. The film is subtitled, so I couldn't exactly do Mark's voice. I had to make it audible and enough for the audience to be able to follow what was going on. We couldn't subtitle our movie throughout. But just exactly how curved Mark's spine was, the way that his right hand pointed palm to the ceiling, his left hand turned in, his head turned to the right, his toes kind of pointed at each other, was really important to me to try to figure out this very contorted position that I would put myself in for the film. And in order to approximate his curved spine, I suggested and helped develop a piece of soccer ball sized piece of foam wrapped with duct tape that we would put onto the left side of my back for every scene to give that curve. That was some of the physical aspect. Mark had a wealth of poetry. He was a journalist. He was an essayist. All that was available. I read everything that I could. Certainly, the article that the film is based on. I pored over that several times for details. On the physical side again, taught myself I made a crude mouth stick with a piece of dowel rod and a pencil eraser and things at home so that I could practice turning pages of a book, dialing a telephone, typing, all things that he did, to try to get a facility with that so that I would be able to effectively do it when we rolled film. There were survivors that were available to talk to, both by phone and in person. Jessica Yu herself, who made the documentary, was a friend of Mark's. Cheryl Cohen Green, who's portrayed by Helen Hunt in the film, the real Cheryl Cohen Green, was available by phone and in person. We made great use of that, and Susan Fernbach, wonderfully portrayed by Robin Weigert in the movie, also was available both by phone and later on in person as we began to shoot. So that's kind of a jumping off point. And then polio itself, Ben Lewin, who directed the film, is a polio survivor and answered any questions I had. But that kind of scratches the surface of where I began. So.
Wow. When you were ever, I guess, just offset or just...
Let me just quickly say, the great thing, I think, as an actor for me that I learned is to over-prepare, gather all this information and try to completely forget it when the director calls action, and just be present with the other person and let whatever happens is going to happen. So.
Right. So like whenever, I guess, you're offset or done filming a scene, do you like become like John Hawkes, or do you end up like still doing something that will keep you in character? Because obviously it's a huge physical performance for you.
Right. This one was extremely uncomfortable. I would say quite painful to lie in this position. It was hard to find this contorted position, and once I found it, I tried to make it second nature. The hardest thing in that was in long takes not moving at all, not shifting to try to relieve pressure or scratch your nose or whatever was bothering you at the time. To just lie incredibly still was painful, but a minute amount of pain compared to what many people deal with in their lives. I'm not some sort of martyr or anything like that. It was a small price to pay to get to be in such a wonderful movie and portray such a great character. But between takes, I'd been seeing a chiropractor, and he was telling me that he was worried that I may be doing permanent damage to my body, and that my organs might be actually migrating within my body, and things from lying in long for a half hour, 45 minutes in a really contorted position without moving at all is hard on your body. So he suggested that when between takes or if the camera was swinging around and moving, I welcomed the chance to just kind of stay there anyway and be still. But he told me to mirror the position, to move the ball to the right side of my back, to turn my right hand inward, my left hand inward, to turn my head the opposite way, and to basically find a new kind of pain that sort of would hopefully adjust me back into a sort of normalcy. I didn't do a lot of jogging or anything between takes. If I got up, I tried to find another horizontal place that was quiet nearby where I could prepare for the next scene, whether it was by listening to music that Mark liked, listening to his voice from the film, and trying to make sure I had a good handle on it, or literally trying to just make sure I was up to speed for the next scene we were going to shoot, lines wise or intention wise, or all the things an actor would normally do in between scenes when they slip off alone, to make sure they're still focused and ready to go.
What got you to say yes to the movie? Like, had you seen the script, or you just knew the story, you just knew what the director was trying to do?
No, I had some luck with Winter's Bone, and got sent a pretty good pile for me of scripts that were mostly offers, and I chose the lowest budget one on the pile. I've got a very understanding manager and agents, and it was just the best one to me. I loved it so much. There was a couple good ones, and a couple big movies that weren't so interesting to me, not because they were big movies, just because they were poorly written, I thought. But
so it's just the best script you got?
It was the best one I got, and the most interesting character, and the most frightening, one to try to figure out how to do. I had no idea how to do it, and it's a good way to begin. I think it's for me, it can be a bad thing when you read a script and you say, I know exactly how to do that. It's more interesting for me to begin with, I have no idea how to do that, and begin to answer each question and solve each problem. But what I had some reticence. There was worry on my part about playing a disabled actor when there are a lot of disabled actors who are very suited to play a part like this, who are very underrepresented. When I met Ben and saw he was disabled himself, and the first question I asked him was, why not a disabled actor? And he said, I'm going to cast a couple of the great disabled actors I've met along the way and auditioned, but he said, I've put a couple of years and I've put feelers out and I've reached out and I have met some amazing men and women, but amongst the guys that they were either not the right age or maybe didn't have quite the experience he felt that they would need to carry a film, or he was just, he just felt like he hadn't found his mark. So he'd begun with disabled actors and had moved on to looking amongst the able community to try to find his guy, and he felt like I might be. Apparently, the casting director that he hired said, John Hawkes, and he rated Winter's Bone and called me back and said, that old guy? He said last night.
Yeah.
Why would I cast that? What? And luckily, when we met and things, I think I half convinced him. I was interested in trying to do it without a body double. I don't think he'd really necessarily considered that at the time, but came around to the idea when we did the camera tests and things like that.
Still has no body double at all?
No prosthetics, no computer graphics, no CGI, no makeup of any kind anywhere, face or body, just the foam ball that we hid cleverly from the camera in every position, and that was it. So, and then just Ben Lewin himself is such a delightful person and such an interesting guy, and I just kept coming back, even though he hadn't made a movie in 20 years, which made me nervous. I just kept coming back to the script, and for the 7 days, 5, 6, 7 days that I took to decide every day, that I would just read the script again and think, this guy knows how to tell a story. Yeah. I don't care that he hasn't made a movie in 20 years. He knows how to tell a story. And that was big. And there were several other things. I thought that we should fight against self-pity. He agreed, and in fact, he said Mark should be neither. This is all at the very first meeting at a deli on a rainy night in West LA 2 years ago now, I guess, or a year and a half, whatever. He said Mark should be neither victim nor saint, which is how disabled people are so often played, and he'd be an asshole, maybe. And sometimes he should be everything. He should be a human being, warts and all, and that interested me. And I said we should find humor at every turn, and Ben said, yes, I think so, and his script reflected that. So just in talking to him, I felt like I'd be in capable hands, and again, he's just such a great human being. And then when I met his wife, and I'd already accepted the role, but she's wonderful too, and you just begin to feel like you're amongst peers and friends and people that you want to know and hang out with for the 22 days that we'd be shooting. So.
Talked about how Winter's Bone, the success for that, your Academy Award nomination opened all these doors. You started getting piles of script, and you sort of between that and Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, you sort of developed this little reputation for playing these sort of menacing, brooding characters. And this was, I'm sure, a revelation to play such a lighthearted but triumphant character. What was that at all in the decision to do that, or is that something you didn't want to pigeon yourself into?
Matt, it really wasn't, Matt. If there had been another brooding, menacing character that came along in that pile that was really, really well written, I'd have, been kind of like, another one. But God, it's so good, I have to do it. I've played a lot of lighthearted characters that people kind of haven't seen for whatever reason. The fact that those two movies, Winter's Bone and Martha, Marcy, kind of jumped, kind of made people, I think, in people's minds that haven't, that maybe, I've been doing it for 20-some years, but I can't fault people for not really knowing what I'd done, because a lot of things weren't highly visible. I get that. But, I'd done Perfect Storm was a guy that had light and dark in him, and Me and You and Everyone We Know was a guy who had light and dark, and it wasn't all, menacing psychos along the way, but those were fresh in people's minds, so maybe this will be something that they'll be surprised by a little bit. I don't really choose that way. I just want to find an amazing story, a role that matters in the story that I would enjoy playing, and then capable people who have signed on to help tell the story. That's kind of where I start.
Yeah, Mark seems like such a fun guy from what I've read and how you portrayed him. This is kind of a different question for you, but if Mark were to get together with one of your previous characters, maybe something from Dusk Till Dawn or Identity or even The Perfect Storm, which one would he really get along with?
Oh gosh, I wonder. Wow, I'm trying to think. Well, Mark didn't really let me think about this. He didn't love rock music and modern culture much. He liked opera and Shakespeare and things like that. So maybe Saul Starr from Deadwood would have been somebody Mark would have hung with a little bit. Saul wasn't, like a smoker and all that kind of thing. He wouldn't have bothered Mark that way. And Saul was a fairly philosophical guy, and Saul, being a Jewish guy, was a guy who certainly in the 1860s was often discriminated against and often felt afraid and couldn't be himself and was looked down on by people, and something that maybe Mark could relate to on some level.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What was the greatest challenge you found on set? And was there ever a moment where you're like, I don't think I can do this? Because, it's a challenging role in so many ways.
Yeah, you tend to romanticize it all, but I'm sure I was probably an SOB a few times on the set when there was times early on when there were sharp edges on the iron lung that were cutting my neck when they'd slide me in and out or into my shoulders, and I would end up lying that way for long periods of time in the lung before they'd figured out where they needed to put foam rubber inside or some sort of protection against the sharp edges of the machine. So gosh, there were several moments where I just thought, I don't know that I'm doing this well, and I think that Mark often had a sense of frustration in him, and sometimes when you play characters, you start to feel like them or think like them. If you're pretending intensely, as I sometimes tend to do, you end up having a piece of the character, in you, even when the camera's not rolling. And I think I snapped a couple times. I think I always apologized, quickly after. But there were some moments where I felt a little lost and wondered if I'd made the right decision and if the movie had the right guy to play the parts.
And how did you get over those moments? Did you just...
Well, the people around me were kind. My girlfriend at the time was working on the other side of the camera, and she was a very kind listener and was very encouraging. And so, those were moments. Those were pretty small. I think on the whole I behaved fairly well. I hope so. And
I'm sure you did.
And but I have to say, there's times when I was lying on the gurney where people would, and I might have mentioned this, where people would, they would, I felt like Mark because they'd be setting, books and costumes and drinks and things, as I'm kind of lying there between takes while they're moving things around, and I began to feel like a piece of furniture sometimes, which Mark often did, but it was more funny than anything else. I was actually kind of complimented by it in a weird way, that it kind of became a non-human being to them between takes. I thought I must be doing something right.
I thought one of the strongest parts about the movie is the chemistry between not just you and Helen Hunt, but William H. Macy. Just the characters in general, the way you interacted with them was so fluid and genuine. What was the experience like working with them, and especially Helen Hunt in such intimate roles together? The chemistry shows.
For sure. I'll really briefly mention Robin Weigert before I get to the other actors who portrays Susan Fernbach at the end of the movie. It's one of those roles in a film that's small enough to where it's really hard to get a really powerhouse actress that this particular role needed, and she had worked on Deadwood and played Calamity Jane on Deadwood, and so we were friends, and she was kind enough to come in, and in a very short amount of screen time she makes the story make a huge amount of sense and brings a great deal of weight and joy to the story that it really needs through those last moments. So I'm really thankful to her. And she and I had not gotten to do a lot of scenes together on Deadwood, so it was really fun for us to. And we'd actually done a short film previous to that, where where we'd gotten to do things together. But she was a gift from above for sure. Bill Macy just seemed to have a handle on exactly what the story needed from moment to moment, and is one of my a very short list of actors that I lionize, and was when Ben told me that he was coming on the project, it's such a low budget project. I think I called Ben 2 or 3 times that day and said, did you tell me earlier that Bill Macy's was that a dream, and or is it for real, for sure? And he kept saying yes, he's going to do the project. And so that was fantastic. He's so great in the movie, and he had Ben and I over to his place to talk about the script, and I felt a real kinship and familiarity with him. He's a terrific actor and a very giving actor, and just really one of our treasures in this country, and indeed in film everywhere. And Helen, the term brave is, I think, bandied about a little too freely amongst what actors do, but she was a very brave soul, emotionally and physically, in this movie, and a true professional, and someone who's been around the block, and she and I took, I think, some real risks together. We didn't rehearse. We didn't get to know each other. Those scenes, those scenes of the sessions in our movie were shot chronologically, and the camera's capturing a lot of first-time stuff between she and I, things that we hadn't rehearsed and stuff that's just happening. We had an unfamiliarity, an awkwardness, and a discomfort, through these scenes, physically and otherwise, that I think was a boon for the film. And hats off to her for kind of being willing. And neither of us spoke about it, but we never got to know each other ahead of time. We met really briefly, had a couple script conferences with Ben, but didn't sit near each other, just kind of talked, and didn't go to dinner or anything like that. We just really showed up and began to shoot those scenes, and she was a really fantastic partner, and had a lot of patience with me, I think, and I will always be eternally grateful to her. Thank you so much, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.